Welcome to the RetailWire Podcast.
Hey everyone, what's going on? It's Brian back again with another great episode here on the RetailWire Podcast. Today we have another one of our Meet the Brain Trust series, and I've got a guy with me today that I think you're really going to enjoy hearing from him. This guy has been the Vice President of Professional Services at NCR Corporation. He is that currently. He's a former senior partner at Teradata. He has been on the board of advisors for ARC Systems and was even with IBM for a few years, along with a lot of other opportunities. And this guy graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point, and somehow we ended up getting him here as a Brain Trust member at RetailWire, which we're very, very happy about. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Mr. David Spear. How you doing, man?
Good. Great to be here with you, Brian.
Yeah, thanks for making this happen. I appreciate you taking the time for us.
Yeah, excited to be here and look forward to our conversation.
Yeah. So where are you at now? Where do you live at?
I live in Atlanta. I've been here for actually quite some time. I grew up in the northern part of the country, Midwest in Michigan. As I graduated from high school, went east to West Point up in New York. I got tired of the cold, and then eventually, after I left the military and moved into the corporate world, I decided to get smart and move down south, where the warm weather is very exciting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a little more interesting down south, especially with some of the storms that we get and everything, right?
Yeah, it's typically the weather here is awesome most of the months of the year. We get the hurricane season, which actually is starting right about now. It runs through about the beginning of November. So occasionally we'll get some of the fringes of big wind here in Atlanta, but it's actually pretty tame. We do get some thunder boomers that roll through here, and every now and then, we'll see a tornado, kind of pop up. But outside of that, it's relatively great weather most of the year.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I've actually, I don't think I've ever been to Atlanta, but I've been to a couple places around it. So I need to make my way down there at some point. So you said you went to we were talking about going to West Point. What led you to jump into the Army?
Well, it actually started with my brother. He's 4 years older than I was, and or still is, and he made the decision to go to the Naval Academy at Annapolis, and so I thought I'd follow in his footsteps, and so I applied to Naval Academy, thinking that I was a shoo-in, no problem. Had good grades, smart enough, good athlete. And I thought no problem. And then I went to take my physical. I had all the paperwork done and, all of that stuff. Went to do the physical, and the doc came back to me and said, you are absolutely perfect, but your eyesight is terrible.
Okay.
And so he said, you'll never be able to fly. And I said, well, I don't care. Just put me on a sub. Just put me on a ship. And he goes, no. You didn't even meet the bare minimums.
Oh, wow.
So
brutal.
So he said, you can't even meet the bare minimums for the Naval Academy. And so I said, okay. And then I immediately did an about face and went north to the military academy, applied there, got in. They gave me a little bit of a waiver, and the rest is history.
And that's really cool, though. I mean, that's neat to see that it's kind of a family thing, that you're following his footsteps and still just serving. So thank you for serving this great nation. But yeah, so welcome to the show. Like we said, we've got a lot to talk about, I know. But you mentioned a little bit about where you grew up. Do you have any family, any kids, any spouse, anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been married for 30 years now to a wonderful wife. Her name's Gigi. And I've got 4 awesome boys. They're a little bit older, 28, 26, 24, and 22. So we were on this 2-year plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they are all professionals working in the world today. My last one is in his final semester at the University of Georgia. So he'll be finishing up in December. So I'm looking forward to him finishing school and moving on to his professional career.
And that's exciting. That's exciting. It's always good to see them grow up
Yeah.
and kind of take their own path in life and figure stuff out. So I bet you're proud just a little bit, right?
Just a little bit, yeah.
Oh yeah. So then, so you've got the wife, you've got the kids. What do you enjoy doing if you're not doing retail stuff? If you're not jumping in with technology, what do you like to do? Are you a fisherman? Are you hiking? What's your thought?
I mean, I love to fish, but it's not one of the things I do on a regular basis. So instead of that, I try to, stay as fit as possible. That kind of started when I was in the military. So I work out a fair amount. Actually, I'm doing CrossFit right now, which has been a lot of fun. So I've been going to the CrossFit gym in my local area for probably 3 to 4 times a week, trying to stay fit, stay strong, keep the body and the mind sharp, and that seems to be working really well. And then I also, when I get a chance to do this, I play golf with my son. So we'll get around in, particularly around holidays when we're back together again. So we enjoy playing golf. Sometimes here in Atlanta, and then sometimes up in the mountains in North Carolina where we have a home. So I love mountain golf because it's a little bit different. It's a little more up and down, a little more challenging than kind of more flat golf that you may find in Atlanta.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite course that you like to play?
There's several. Really close to where our home is in North Carolina, we've got about 4 courses that are awesome. I mean, really, really good. Okay. There are a couple that are very narrow. There are a couple that are really, really hilly and challenging. So it's, every time you go, you got to hit more irons than your drivers.
Yeah, no, I get that. See, you could just take me golfing with you, and I will make you look really great. Even if you're mediocre at golf, I'm gonna make you look like a pro. So
I don't know. I'm not the greatest. My sons always beat me, and it frustrates me because I'm very competitive and I want to win. But they have found the way to beat me most times.
Yeah. Yeah, that's anybody ever asked me to go golfing or do I golf? I'm just like, I can drink beer and ride in a cart. How about that? Does that work? Okay.
Well, speaking of drinking, so during COVID, one of my missions was to figure out the best and the most optimal recipe for an old fashioned. So if you like bourbon, if you're a bourbon fan, right? So I have perfected, Brian, the best formula for an old fashioned. It is fantastic. So that was one of my little side gigs as I was, working through COVID as everyone else was from home and trying to get out every now and then, right? I would just formulate different mixes and thought of myself as a mixologist, a bourbon mixologist, and it actually came out. The formula came out to be tasting pretty good. I've trialed it now with several people, and everything I get back is nothing but great results.
Good.
So one of these days I'll have to make one for you.
Well, I was going to say, you're going to have to do that, but I mean, is that something you're ever looking to do, like some licensing on or something like that, and kind of maybe make it a little side hustle for you?
I wish, yeah. All right. I haven't found the time to do that, but when I do have some extra time, I may do that.
Yeah, I know some people that it might be of good interest to you, so we could maybe put you in touch. So where are you now in your career? I know we're talking about you're the vice president of professional services at NCR. How did you How did you come to work for NCR? What was the path to that?
Oh, this was a long, different path. Kind of a circuitous route, you might say. I have worked, and I've been very fortunate to have worked for many, many companies throughout my career. All told, I think there's about 10 of them. They include some of the best companies in the world, including the Coca-Cola company. You mentioned IBM earlier. So I spent many years with them. Um, Capgemini is another consulting company, Teradata, data and analytics company. I worked for a couple of different startups, one of which was a mobile company when mobile wasn't really cool. It was actually before the 2007 when the iPhone was launched. So, nothing was really cool around mobile back then. I've worked, several of them have been in the Fortune 100, Fortune 500 classification. And several of them have kind of been a mix of consulting and product related companies. So it's been a interesting ride throughout my career because I have purposely built more of a general manager type background with specific focus in certain areas. And like I said earlier, one of those is in the digital transformation space. It's really where consumer meets digital and product and brand, and where they all kind of intersect is that sandbox in which I've kind of played with for a long time. And today at NCR, I do a lot of consulting with clients in that area where we see digital, we see brand, we see consumer, all interacting together, kind of that Venn diagram, and they all interact there and connect. And that transformation that takes place is a really cool place to be, because there's just so many things that are happening, and I'm sure we'll get into some other questions about different technologies and things like that, but there's just a tremendous amount of things that are happening very rapidly, and being on the forefront of that has allowed me to see some really cool things, to do some really cool things, to meet some great people, and to work for some awesome clients.
Yeah. And that's fantastic. Speaking of, and don't ask why I have this, because I genuinely don't know, but so readily available here. You were talking about before mobile was cool. So you mean maybe like having something like this guy here?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It would not surprise me. I have not charged this in years, but it would not surprise me to see one of these turn right on. Now, this one truly is dead, but I do have the charger for it. Or maybe you're more of a brick style person, maybe we could go with
there
that
you go.
one. A really cool changeable case, if that says anything about me in college. But yeah, no, that's a really cool career path line. And like, to see, you're right. I mean, there's so much, not only has there been so much going on since 2007, but even just in recent years of the development, of all the mobile technologies and the different, you touched on data and analytics, just the way that we're starting to understand more and more and more, at just this, it just seems exponential growth in that field as far as what's possible thanks to understanding data and analytics, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just amazing what has sort of spawned from the digital revolution that occurred, 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? And oh my gosh, the ability or the capabilities that are now available for companies, really at their fingertips to do so many different things. And certainly there's concerns about budgets, and we don't have an army of people to do all this, right? So there's some constraints placed in there with what you can do based on time and money and effort and all that kind of stuff. But the world is everyone's oyster right now with the capabilities that are available for companies, for clients. It's just for innovators, for entrepreneurs, it's really a cool time right now in retail and most industries, not just retail, but all industries. You're seeing new innovations that are kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, and it's like it seems like every day there's another. I mean, obviously the hot topic right now would be generative AI and all that,
Yeah.
as it's coming into play. But it truly seems like there's something new coming to the field almost every single day, new capabilities, new little widgets or anything else that can be added to, little apps and everything that can be added on to different services. It's quite fascinating.
Yeah,
But
and when you contrast that, Brian, with you going back to my kind of circuitous route that where I've gotten today,
yeah,
when I started just after I left the military into the corporate environment, one of my first companies I worked for was this firm called McMaster Car Supply Company. And I'm sure the audience, no one knows what that company is, but it actually was like the Amazon before Amazon existed, right? It
okay,
was this great little company. It was family owned out of Chicago on a kind of a second or third generation, family member. And they were a retail mail order catalog house. And they
okay,
had about 150,000 different products that they sold to manufacturers, to processing plants, primarily kind of the ugly side of businesses, right? And they were like Amazon today, even though they existed well before Amazon. And
yeah,
if you think about what Bezos and Amazon did over the years with building different channels and different parts of their business, starting with books and then moving into music and then all these other things that they brought on. That was the type of company that I worked for, but minus the internet.
yeah,
And
yeah, and that's no small feat to accomplish that, right?
yeah, absolutely. No, it was kind of a cool place to cut my teeth. And then a few years passed by, and I started working for the Coca-Cola company, and that's really where my first, I would say, experience with retail took place.
Okay,
I had the opportunity to take on one of our largest global customers, and that was the 7-Eleven business. But it was the
okay,
7-Eleven business in Asia Pacific. So I managed all of the licensee relationships from China down to Australia. And so I
oh
traveled
wow,
all the time over to Asia Pacific. And one of the things that I always made sure that I did is get into the market as often as I could, run through as many stores as I could in the different countries to understand the nuances of retail, the intricacies of retail. And that's really where I cut my teeth, understanding what retail is all about. So it wasn't working for a retailer, but it was a vendor or a supplier to a large retail operating company. The amount you can learn by working on different ways to bring value to those retailers is amazing, and that was just
yeah.
a fun experience.
Thinking back to making that kind of that trek amongst the different countries, what were there any points, I guess, that really stood out to you as kind of some differentiators that maybe you wouldn't have thought about, trying to service the 7-Eleven side, just across same brand but totally different areas, totally different demographics in those regions. Um, were there any things that stood out to you about kind of teaching about adaptability or anything there?
Yeah, one of the things that 7-Eleven was really great at, they were amazing at this, was local market execution, and execution from the standpoint of local flavors, foods, fresh items that they always brought into their stores. And
Yeah,
and and it varied, right? Because as I said, I traveled from China all the way down to Australia.
yeah,
That's a long, ways from from point to point. And I've been on those flights a lot, and it
yeah,
takes a while to get around in those countries. But what was amazing was the differences in the fresh food offerings, but everybody had them, right? And so there was
mhm,
consistency in the strategy of offering freshness, available items in that
yeah,
local flavor, local kind of demographic, and that proved to be extremely valuable and profitable for those licensees. So a great lesson to learn, catering to your, local customers who have specific tastes, specific, flavor, profiles that they really enjoy. And they did a great job of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you bring up that specific area because that's one thing I noticed that changed massively whenever like Whole Foods used to be extremely local in their approach at every store. So every store had its own
Yeah.
flavor, its own feel. You had your own little vibe to everything going on, right? And then a certain company took over, and then they bought them out, and then decided to kind of sterilize the whole process, right? Everything needed consistency across the board is what they wanted. And that was very interesting to see kind of how it really felt like when the brand went away from that hyper local, sourcing and that hyper local approach to how they marketed and who they marketed to, knowing their specific demographics and their specific shoppers within that region. I feel like the brand itself took a big hit. So, to hear and see that 7-Eleven was so good about that, and I'm sure still is to this day, even, they're when you know your local audience, that really does help, solidify you as a brand and kind of solidifies your position within the community.
Yeah, it really does. And I'll give you a statistic that'll kind of blow you away and to prove your point of what you just said. So when I was, this was, when I managed that business, it was, many years ago. And I thought that the Thailand licensee had a lot of stores. Thailand's not a very big country, right? And back then that the country had, the licensee had about 2,500 stores. And I thought, wow, that's a pretty good number. Today
Yeah.
they have 27,000. So
Well, all right.
it's like, obviously the model is working and
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine so.
yeah. So it's
Yeah.
and almost every country has grown, not quite as fast, but 2x, 3x, right? So the store numbers have increased dramatically, and that's just proof that what they're doing works, catering to their consumers and really providing utility and value every single day, which is the mantra of what retail ought to be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you see similar stuff. I know in like KFC, McDonald's, Pizza Hut, any of those, they definitely do a really great job of adapting to local markets. So, man, those numbers are astounding. Like, ooh, all right, I was not expecting that one. Um, so then you went in through the 7-Eleven side, as you said, Coca-Cola, right? So went in through that, and then as you were kind of growing through that, then you started heading into that where you're at now is data and analytics, right? So like how did that kind of grow for you? What was that path like for you? Were there any struggles kind of in the beginning of your career with that you're kind of grasping, or any on the opposite side, were there any quick wins that you had that were like, wow, I totally didn't expect this, but I'm really good at this?
Yeah, it was interesting. When I was at the Coca-Cola company and working with 7-Eleven, it was both retail and consumer product focused, right? Because I served a retailer, I worked with a retailer, but I also needed to understand the business elements of consumer products and how we make those products, how we source them, how we deliver innovation on a regular basis. And so it was an awesome experience. And as we were getting close to the dot-com bubble bursting, I kind of did a sort of a reflection on my career and said, wow, I think there's something missing in my sets of experiences. And that big gaping hole was technology. And,
Yeah.
when you look back at my resume, I'm like, okay, that's pretty good, but there really isn't any understanding or knowledge firsthand about how technology comes into play for large organizations. And so I made this pivot much to the chagrin of my wife, because
The instability of that.
I decided to give up the brown sugar water business and move into the technology business. So I jumped, full into the deep end of technology.
Yeah.
And you talk about struggles, right? So for the first year, I had no idea what I was doing.
Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm not, a coder. I didn't have at that time any kind of technology skill set. I didn't even know what the acronyms were for general things. I knew everything about retail well, not everything, but a lot about retail and consumer products, but very little about technology. But I thought, you know what? Again, going back to that, I'm going to build this general manager profile. I'm going to,
Yep.
have all these diverse experiences across the portfolio of functional silos within business, and technology was one that I didn't experience. And so I left the consumer product business, jumped into technology. That actually led me down this path of digital. And
Mm-hmm.
as technology really started to gain momentum, and we started to see some not only innovations but revolutions, type stuff in the technology space with companies that were like Amazon, like Google, like Apple, right? That were really gaining a lot of steam and creating all of these really cool things.
Yeah.
I was, kind of in the middle of that and started to learn just a tremendous amount of not only technology, but then how does it play a role? How does it play, a significant purpose inside of these large organizations like a retail organization or a consumer product organization? So I really started to get that understanding in a much more profound way. And then
Yeah.
moved into, I parlayed that into consulting roles where I was still focused on industry, retail, consumer products, hospitality, but then, adding in the digital and the transformation piece, and all of that sort of morphed together over a 10 to 15 year period to kind of where I am today. Right. And you can throw data and analytics in there as well. So it
Yeah.
was definitely a windy path, and there were some points along the road where I kind of stood by the roadside and said, "What am I doing?"
Yeah.
I'm not sure if the path is clear, but I kept my head down, worked really hard, networked like crazy, and eventually started to see the path sort of open and said, "Aha! This could be good."
Yeah. Do you think just did you pull from, I would imagine, some of your military experience and kind of the determination that you had
Oh
there?
yeah.
Did that probably come in useful throughout those
Yeah,
years, right?
absolutely. There's a lot of leadership lessons I learned early in my life, at West Point and in the Army, and very fortunate to have those, because I use those regularly, right? And that those serve me well. Kind of you reach a point where you say, well, things aren't going well, and it's like, hey, you know what? You got to buckle up and strap in, because you got to pull up your boots and make this happen, right? So
Yep.
um, yeah, those kinds of small little lessons along the way proved to be very valuable, and grit and determination, perseverance, all of those things are extremely important, in anyone's career, because at any point in time, someone's career is going to, it might waffle, it might kind of drift and glide in a different direction. You may have something that upsets the apple cart, and you just need to figure it out, right? And those
Yeah.
lessons in perseverance and grit and determination play a very important role.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny. I got a 12-year-old son. He just turned 12, but there's been obvious times where he'll say, "Well, I don't know why I have to do that," or "Well, I don't want to do that," And so, and I was like, "Look, here's the deal. You have to do it no matter what, right? So it has to be done. So you get to choose whether you do it with a smile on your face or whether you do it and you're pissed off. Either way, it still has to be
Yeah,
done. So you might as well do it with a smile on your face and just at least somewhat try to enjoy the situation, right?"
that's right.
And he's like, "Okay, fine, I get it." So get the eye roll in there, of course. And but yeah, I think that's huge. Determination is huge, especially for anybody who wants to get to, even the middle or the front of the pack. If you're satisfied at the last place, then by all means give up the determination. But if you really want to grow and dig in, then sometimes that's going to take you just
Mhm.
uh, jumping in feet first, kind of like you did with your about face you were saying there, and just going, hey, let's give this new thing a shot. Um, what is something that, we talked about determination being something that's really important for people maybe just getting into their career, or starting out in their path. Is there anything else that you might recommend to people who say, hey, I think I want to get into retail, or hey, I think I want to get into whether it's a related field, directly to you or not? What would something be today that you would say, hey, if you're jumping into the workplace today, um, what's something that people really need to be paying attention to? What's a characteristic or skill they might want to get, or a technology or something they might want to really start to understand and wrap their minds around right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think there's so much going on in the industry right now, as we all know, right? With technology and, AI being kind of the top of mind with most people. But I would say for individuals that are looking to jump into retail, or looking to build out skill sets that will serve them well in the future, it's around data analytics, digital
Hmm.
transformation, AI, all of those areas, um, where they may not get a heavy dose of that if they're in a certain role today.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but every company is a data company. Data is the lifeblood of the future of every company, and if companies are not thinking like that, they really should be, um,
Yeah.
because it is a critical area to focus on. Data, inside the data, there are tremendous insights that are waiting to be unlocked. It's a matter of how you go about it. And there are a number of different ways that you can unlock the potential there, right? There are a number of different tools and solutions that you can use. So there's no one cookie cutter approach, but understanding sort of the strategy around digital transformation, data, AI is super important for individuals. You don't have to be a
Hmm.
coder. I'm not a coder. I wish I was, but I'm not, right?
Yeah.
I'm more of a strategist, and kind of looking at how do you connect all these disparate dots and all these different silos, right? How do you leverage some of the technologies for the best benefit, for an organization like a retailer? Knowing those strategic kind of intents and is really important. And and so I would say, if there was an opportunity to take a role, maybe a lateral role for 2 months, 6 months, kind of a temporary type thing just to learn, or maybe it's a full-time gig, for a year or two, do it.
Hmm.
Absolutely jump into
Yeah.
it, and don't fear it, right? I mean, technology can sometimes be daunting,
Yeah.
because it's
It can be
it
intimidating for
it
sure if you don't
it
understand
absolutely
it or see the
it absolutely
application.
can, especially when you get in the weeds around. Well, I'm a Python coder, and no, I use SQL. I use R, and like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what you're talking about. But that's okay, right? Because there are tools like AI that, in the future, you're going to be able to generate queries where I think,
Yeah.
SQL sometimes may become obsolete, right?
Yeah.
AI may be so advanced, it might help individuals not even knowing SQL actually develop queries to get to the answers and unlock the potential within the data set. So there, I
Absolutely.
would absolutely recommend kind of a series of opportunities in those kinds of fields, because I just think it's so powerful.
Yeah. No, and it's funny you say that, because actually we're going through some of that right now, even here at RetailWire. I'll pull back the curtain briefly here and just say we're actually working on redesigning our entire website right now, and so part of how we're doing that, our CEO does understand some code, but he's not a full blown coder, right? And so we've actually ended up using generative AI and different tools that are available, whether it's Chat GPT or Google Bard or anything like that. we've been able to go in and figure out, okay, write me a script for this, help me figure out what do I need to understand about how to make this function happen on the website.
Yeah.
And so you'll see some of those things come to fruition in our new iteration of the website. And that has truly been because rather than have to sit around for 3, 4, 5 hours reading and understanding, he was able to figure out the one little piece of code that he needed. It's not the entire site that he coded, but it's this little piece that he needed to make something function. Was able to have it in like 5 minutes or less, thanks to knowing how to ask for something, what to ask for. And I think that's honestly just as important for someone getting into it. Probably is figuring out the how to ask certain questions, what questions to ask, because then once you fully jump in and you make that commitment to that career path or that position, whatever else, then you'll be even that much more successful. So
Yeah, absolutely. And just to dive in a little bit more, about AI and the potential that has for retailers, for all kinds
yeah.
of companies. I mean, there's two sides of the coin here, right? I think we both know
Hmm.
there's a positive and kind of a negative side to this, right? And the positive side, I think about, just the amazing amount of data that is in front of everybody, right? It's kind of like, wow, I can't get my head around that because there's so much data here, and how many records I have
Yeah.
to pull together, and all these different data sources, and how do we bring it together, unify it, harmonize it to pull back the insights correctly, right? So you're talking billions of records being crunched at an alarming speed. But you
Yeah.
think about AI and I think about research, and whether you're a physicist, whether you are a physician, whether you are looking to solve cancer or diabetes or different disease states, the volume of
Hmm.
data you have to go through when you're doing some of these pieces of research is crazy. But AI
Hmm.
has the potential to kind of help sift through that very quickly, understand different things very quickly, productively, and can get the physician or the scientist to a end state quicker, right? And so the outcome of that can be amazing. And so the positive side of that is just it's unlimited. The negative side, as we've seen through some articles and some publications where some folks have used public AI tools and they actually
Hmm.
didn't know what they're doing, and they revealed trade IP secrets of their own company because they used public AI tools and put that information in, and now it's all public, right? um,
Yeah. Exactly.
so there's this sort of bad side to it, and you're starting to see companies put some guardrails around it, saying, "Hey, maybe we should take a time out here, figure out how to use it most effectively for our company, for our partners, for our vendors, right, for our stakeholders." And then once we do, then let's unleash it, right?
Yeah.
So there's just tremendous opportunity with AI. We can go deep in this for a long time, but anyway, I wanted to share a couple of just examples about that.
Yeah. Would you say that's probably one of your kind of your hot button topics right now, in kind of where we're headed?
Yeah, it is. It's a real hot button, because it has both good and bad to it, and so the whole privacy, bias, security side of it can be scary. And
Yeah.
not putting guardrails around it can be kind of dangerous almost, right? And so it could lead to some bad outcomes. On the flip side, man,
Oh, I've seen Terminator.
yeah, right. But I also think there's a couple of other hot areas too, Brian, and that is, you know, um, privacy is consumer data violations. That's a hot area and growing. Here's a factoid that'll blow your mind. The world is developed, produced, distributed, copied, right? Something like 33 zettabytes of data today, right? But in 2 years, the world is going to see exponential growth to like 175 zettabytes. So it's like a 6x, factor. Um, And if you didn't know what a zettabyte is, it's 1,024 exabytes. And if you didn't know what that is, that's equal or translatable to about 60 billion video games, right? So
Yeah.
it's just a massive amount of data that's being created in the world, and it's growing at this alarming clip. Um, and so the privacy around that is sometimes scary. And we all have experienced going to the mailbox, opening it up, and getting a letter saying your data has been compromised from
Yeah.
your bank, from this company, from that company, and that's not a good feeling.
Yep. No. Now imagine that compounded and much more rapid as well.
Yeah, exactly. So the whole privacy thing is very interesting with all the states that have legislation pending on House floors today. There's probably no less than 25 different states in the U.S. that have pending legislation that's up for either proposal or vote. Of course, we know about California CCPA, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're gonna, we're gonna see
Now, really quick,
more
just
of this.
for those who might be listening that don't know what you're talking about, can you explain, like in a nutshell, what the California
Oh,
CCPA
yeah.
is?
So California put together a privacy protocol essentially to protect consumers' data, right? So PII, right? Consumer
Yeah.
privacy information, and they put this to a vote, and the general public actually approved it about, I think it was about 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, and it's really for.
We've always been really good at leading on that field too, I think.
I'm sorry.
So California's always had some very interesting takes on stuff, but they also have very much led, I think, in
They have.
that side of things very
They
frequently.
have, they
So
have, and since its inception, there have been a couple of instances where they have levied fines against some companies, not massive ones. In Europe, the same kind of law exists. It's called GDPR, right, for the
mhm.
EU, and that was enacted, probably 3, 4 years ago, and they've doled out some huge fines in magnitude of 50 million, 100 million, 250 million to several different companies. We haven't seen that kind of magnitude here, but again, going back to this notion of the data growing at this exponential rate, and hackers being hackers and taking advantage of certain loopholes here and there, I think this will continue to be a hot button for retail and for other industries, and companies really need to pay attention to it, because the consumer data they're collecting, how they're using that, how they're conducting their personalization and customer 360 efforts becomes super
Yeah.
important.
Absolutely. I mean, I think of just a story from the news from years ago. I'm sure you're familiar with this one, where Target knew that a certain customer of theirs was pregnant before the father
Yeah.
knew, or before her dad knew. She was a teenager, and just for anybody who doesn't know what I'm talking about, essentially they had used several data points, including her purchase history tied to her credit card and everything else, or debit card that she was using at the time, I guess, whatever. And because of her purchase history and some of the things that had aligned, they started sending her different ads, her name at the home address. And one of those happened to be a pregnancy ad, talking about maternity clothes or baby items. And the father ran into Target and said, he was really mad, very upset, that why would you send my young daughter this? And it started to blow up at him, and they said, hey, we need to have a talk with you, because you probably need to go talk with your daughter. And then come to find out, they were actually correct, and so they knew that. And so I think of that scaled up now with machine learning, AI, any of that. Just think of how custom and personal, in a positive way, that your ads or your different services, technologies, products, any of that can get. But then also it can definitely probably cause some conundrums for people, and it will undoubtedly cause some problems here and there. But we'll get through it, right?
That story is an interesting one.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very very crazy, and I think that was the first real public story of something like that happening, and it's happened I think a couple times since then, but not exactly the direct relation there. So I know we'll start winding down here, but if you could go back, thinking over your history, thinking of everywhere you've been, thinking of what you've done and where you've ended up at today, is there anything, if you could go back to yourself when you were kind of getting this ball rolling, whether it's before the big shift from Coke to retail side, um, or whenever that would be, is there one piece of advice that you would go back and tell yourself, that just kind of you would want yourself to know more now?
I think early in my career, I didn't ask enough questions. Um,
Mm,
and a piece of advice that I would always issue today to younger individuals is ask a lot of questions. Don't be afraid to raise your hand or interrupt somebody and say, "Hey, I don't see the connection here. I don't quite get it. Where are you coming from?" Because I can guarantee you 50% of the other people in the room probably have the same question, but they're too afraid to ask that question.
yeah.
so
Yep.
ask it. Go ahead and ask it. And then, uh, don't be afraid of failure, right? Some of the best inventions, some of the best ideas have come from, multiple failures, right? We all know that from
Mm,
history. And so go ahead and fail fast. Use that mantra, and then pivot quickly, course correct, and then move on. Um,
yep.
and you know, I I like to use the 80-20 rule a lot, right? Because it saves you a bunch of time. In most cases, it's pretty good, right? Um,
Hmm.
there's a great book. It's called The 80-20 Principle by Richard Koch. Fantastic read, real simple, easy. Be a great book for a young professional to read. Don't get into paralysis by analysis. Use that 80-20 rule, but do ask a lot of questions because it does start to help you understand and get along um, with the process a lot faster. And that was probably one of the things I didn't do earlier in my career. Whereas now I'm asking every question under the sun, right? so,
Hmm. Oh yeah. No, I think that's absolutely right. And you said another thing in there. You said fail fast, and there's a John Maxwell book, Failing Forward, and I
yeah.
think that's just a huge thing that a lot of people are afraid to fail. And so, my hope for anyone who has that drive and that determination is that they fail fast, they fail frequently, but they fail forward. Right? Like I want them to be able to experience the unfortunate side of defeat, but it's also it's that defeat that helps drive you to dig in and just really keep pushing forward. So don't give up when you experience those failures. Just keep moving forward because you didn't fail. You just learned one way it doesn't work, right?
Right, and to that point, there's always more than one way to solve a problem.
Yeah.
Another small piece of advice, right? I mean, don't get stuck in the rut that immediately you say, "Oh, I know how to solve this problem. Yeah, we can do this," right? Take the time to peel the onion back and
Mhm.
look at a problem multidimensionally, because I can almost guarantee you there's a second and a third way to solve the problem. And typically, when you take the time to look at it from a bunch of different angles, you're gonna put together a better solution, something that has more value, it's more enduring, and you're going to get better life out of it, right? Versus that
Absolutely.
immediate response. Oh, yep, I know that. Yep, that's easy. We can do that. It's like,
Yeah.
what? Step back. Pull the covers back. Really take a hard look at this and figure out multiple ways to solve it.
Yeah. Well, and you think about that from the idea too that when you step back and really analyze the situation, you can start seeing where sure you might solve one problem, but you might create three more problems in the making of that. And so, I think of the rowboat with the fox, the corn, or the bag of corn and the goose, and you have to get them all across the river, but you can only take, was it one or two things with you at a time across the river. And so you have to do it in the right order, or else you create more headache for yourself, And so, if you don't know what I'm talking about there, go look it up on Google. It's worth it, I promise. But, man, thank you so much for your time today, Dave. I really, really appreciate you. Thanks for making time for us here at RetailWire and being a Brain Trust member. And if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that? Is that LinkedIn, I would assume, or is there another way that you can that people can reach out to you?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is probably the best way and the fastest way to reach me. I'm there. I'm always, available and up for a chat. So, feel free to connect with me. Send me a message. I'd be happy to respond. And thanks, Brian, for the invitation for the podcast. It's been great talking to you. Fun, engaging. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, this has been really great for me as well. So we will put the link to your LinkedIn down in the show notes.
Yeah,
here.
that'd be great.
But also, do Dave a favor, and if you send him a friend request or a connection request on LinkedIn, be sure and mention that you heard of him on the RetailWire podcast, so that way he knows you're not somebody trying to pitch him. And
that would
say,
be great.
Hey, do you need another 47 leads this month? Because I have received, I think, 47 of those today, and I declined every single one of those. So, let him know where you heard about him, so that way he knows you're actually a real human being. And
thank you for saying that, Brian.
We'll see you. Yeah. No, trust me. I know if you don't say it, then it doesn't happen. So, and even when you do say it, statistically speaking, that's all the time we have for today. So we will catch you next time here on the RetailWire podcast. Be sure and hit the subscribe button. Follow us on all your favorite podcast platforms. If you're listening right now, but you'd like to see what Dave or I look like, you can head over to our RetailWire YouTube channel where we host all this as well. And you can actually get to see us there. Leave us a comment anywhere. If you leave us a comment on the podcast or on our YouTube, you might hear that read in the next episode or an upcoming episode. So we'd love to hear back from you, hear what you think about the podcast. And that's what we got. So I hope you have a wonderful day, and we will see you next time here on the RetailWire Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the RetailWire Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Be sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting platform and leave us a comment for a chance to hear it read on the next show. See you next time here on the RetailWire Podcast.